Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am most pleased and honored to be joined by another Mind, Body, Sleep mentorship student today. His name is Mike. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Beth, for having me. This is an honor to be on your podcast.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. I know that from working with you, that one of your North Stars throughout the program has been to pay it forward, right? I know that this is something that's really important to you. And I also know that you are a very busy person. So thanks for taking the time to join us today.
We were just talking about how it's very busy, and I'm certainly glad to be sleeping better because February is the busiest month for my job. Now, I'll give you some background, if you could, how I got here.
Absolutely.
So, I've never had a problem with sleep. In 2020, it was the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I work in the healthcare field. And starting in about March, every morning we had to log into Zoom. There were no more in-person meetings. We had to look at what are the symptoms of COVID? What are the screening questions you ask people? What is the personal protective equipment that you wear? And do you screen yourself? Do you have a fever? Do you have a stomach ache? I mean, there was any kind of pain was almost at that point was linked to COVID. So it was very duplicitous. There was some toxic messaging. It was very unclear. And I think everybody was stressed out across the world, especially people who had loved ones who had it or were in the hospital. But it was there's a lot of uncertainty. You have taught the people in your program that insomnia is a threat detection system. Well, I was perceiving a lot of threats. I didn't know. To be honest, I was concerned that I could get COVID and pass it to one of the patients I work with, and they could get very sick or die. I mean, I don't know. I just felt like that apprehension. So subsequently, I would say for 2 months from about March, let's just say 3 months, March to June, I woke up every night from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. I'm just approximating. And I just think I was ruminating about what was going on in the world and life. But the thing is, even though I was up for an hour, the kids were then both doing school from home, high school and elementary school, the two girls we have. And then my wife, works in the schools, was also from home. So we could really sleep in past 8. There wasn't a rush to get out. So even though I didn't sleep as well, I got my sleep. So that lasted 2 months. We all sort of settled down with the pandemic and the problem went away entirely. I never had any issues until about the fall of 2023, so maybe close to a year and a half ago. So my lovely wife had been having these focal headaches above her right eyebrow, and she took Tylenol, pain would go away, but then she might take Advil, the pain would come back. While she was managing the pain was not dissipating. That was a source of consternation for us, for certain, because I know some people at this prestigious teaching hospital in Washington, D.C. So Sarah, my wife, went down there for an MRI with this well-known neurologist. The neurologist said after the MRI that she was 70% sure my wife was going to get multiple sclerosis. Whoa. So this is earth-shattering to hear this.
Yeah.
I work with people in my job that have MS. So no one wants a progressive neurological disease. Not one.
Yeah.
But I was at the point where I was like bartering now with God. I said, God, if you're going to give anyone MS in this household, give it to me, because I don't want my wife to have it. And I understand it. I don't want it, but I was very concerned. So I would say that's when, understandably, I was having this threat detection. We talk about insomnia. I was not sleeping. I'll give an example of what it was like. So I go to bed almost always at the same time, just with family and kids and everything, about 10:30. I would wake up at 11:30. I said, I'm not looking for a power nap. I'm looking to go to sleep. So of all the things with insomnia, this sucked, excuse my language. So this was happening night after night after night. I'm not sleeping well. And then I would wake up at 11:30. I would fall back asleep about 1 o'clock. Then something would happen again. At some point, I would even have like heart palpitations. That's because I was just so nervous. It wasn't a cardiac thing. I was obviously concerned about my wife, who honestly was handling it much, much better than I was. So I started researching things. You talk about if you pay all this attention to insomnia, it's feeding the monster.
Yeah.
So I'm researching things. I'm going on Facebook and joining insomnia groups. Be very careful to your listeners what you look for when you join something on Facebook. I would say most people were just there to complain how horrible everything was.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of constructive strategies about to get better. Oh, I haven't slept in 4 years. I had 2 hours last night. That's the most I've had all week. I'm on lorazepam. I'm on Ativan. So this was actually discouraging me more. Actually, while it did make me feel better because I was not as bad of an insomniac as these people, I was deflated that this could go on permanently without a solution. Yeah. So I went to the pharmacy. Melatonin is not a prescription drug. It's prescription drugs in Europe. But in the United States, you can get it at a pharmacy. They have different kinds of dosages from 3 to 10. I had gotten a sleep study. The neurologist that does the sleep study basically said, you don't have sleep apnea. This is anxiety. You can take 10 milligrams of melatonin. He didn't even tell me. He had his people tell me. He never responded to any of my calls or anything. It was kind of a disappointment. So I started looking for something that would work. Melatonin is if you're a shift worker. It's good if you're crossing time zones. It is not really supposed to be so that you can fall asleep. It might be to help you fall asleep, but it's not good for staying asleep. So I found something that did work. I found Excedrin PM. That is Tylenol with aspirin and Benadryl. And it's the Benadryl that knocked me out, Beth. So I got 5 hours of sleep consistently 4 nights in a row. And then I would say I slept a total of 6, whatever it was. I was elated. I was ecstatic. I was so happy because I had what I was calling this brain fog, where I was having physical, emotional, spiritual exhaustion all at once. You know, a lot of it was anxiety based, but I was very tired. This went away after those nice 4 nights of sleep. But what was interesting is I talked to my cousin who is a physician, and he said, Mike, long-term Benadryl use is highly correlated with dementia. So said, I'm in my 50s. I don't want to fast track dementia. You know, all of us might get it when we're aging, but I don't want this. So interesting. At the same time, I realized Benadryl was not going to be an option. My wife got another MRI at this hospital in DC, and it clearly showed that she does not have MS. That basically she had a very bad scan from not a good MRI machine or something. So that was certainly a relief. I didn't want her having any, you know, it was just a relief. Yeah. But this was the thing where literally I said, oh, well, I can't take this. Melatonin doesn't really work for me. I can't take Benadryl. Sarah's okay. So I actually don't need to worry about my sleep. And then I slept fine for 6 months. And, you know, you've talked about this.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying any attention. I remember I would just close my eyes and I'd say, okay, well, that sleep thing was, I don't know what that was, but I'm okay now.
Okay, so let me pause right here just to do a quick recap for the listeners, because this is such a common trajectory that, you know, we see with insomnia. It actually makes a lot of sense how this happened. And you explained it so well, how you know, how everyone's threat detection system, I think, was put to the test during the pandemic. You know, we had never been through anything like that. You know, everybody's nervous system was affected in some way, shape, or form, no matter where you were on the planet. And then, you know, you went through that really difficult situation with your wife in 2023. And it was sort of expressing, you know, that stress was expressing in your sleep. And, you know, it sounds like maybe you've never had anything like that before. Is that right? Like maybe you never thought about much about sleep before. And then, you know, of course, that led you to the Facebook groups or, you know, the online, you know, which can be a scary place sometimes, you know, when you're going through something like that. And then, of course, that led you to the Tylenol PM or the Benadryl. And that's when we jump on the hamster wheel of external solutions, you know. So it's all just so understandable how how this happened. Okay, so tell us what happened then. Now you realize that it's a long-term fix for you. So then what happened?
I was fine. I mean, I didn't really pay as much mind to it. So last year, in I would say April of 2024, I'm at a Nats game with my friend, and we're just hanging out talking. He goes, "Hey, whatever happened to that insomnia that you were dealing with?" For whatever reason, I started hyper focusing on it. And we talk about as insomnia as this hyper arousal. So I started thinking to myself, well, why did I ever have it? What did I do to deal with it? Is it going to come back? I don't know why. I feel like it was a seed planted back in my brain. So that night, this was like, I think it was a Thursday afternoon game. So Thursday night, I didn't sleep much at all. I had that go to sleep and wake up thing, which I loathe. Then that Friday, similar thing where I got this on again, off again, very restless sleep. That Saturday, I had to drive up to Pittsburgh. My oldest daughter goes to college there, and I had to go pick up a couple things from her dorm because it was getting towards the end of the semester. So I remember leaving here in Maryland. It's almost a 4-hour drive, and I felt like an anxious zombie where I was obviously sleep deprived, but I was very apprehensive about what is this problem coming back again? I thought this was taken care of. I don't have time for this in my life. I need to move on from this. So I drove up. I had to stop off at Dunkin' and get coffee. It was somewhere on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So I got up there, and I remember I had packed melatonin with me, and I even took melatonin that night. I stayed in a hotel with myself for the night, and I took like 10 milligrams or something of melatonin just to make sure that I would be okay to drive back. But it was very deflating. So when I got back into the DC area, I started looking for solutions to this issue. I found CBT-I, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. The only person that I could find that had availability was actually in Santa Barbara, California, but was licensed in Maryland. He ran a sleep disorders clinic in this area. Very knowledgeable, knew more about sleep than I'll really care to know. I met with him every 2 weeks or so. We talked about the science of sleep. We talked about deep sleep and REM sleep. And then we got to the sleep hygiene. So the sleep hygiene includes don't look at your phone before you go to bed. Don't watch TV before you go to bed. Make sure you go to bed and get out of bed at the same time. Nothing that you can find these all on a Google search, I assure you. But then he developed his own little sleep tracker. It was a spreadsheet. And I had to come up with my sleep efficiency score. Beth, I really thought I was back in grad school. Doing like a one-on-one with one of my professors. So if your sleep efficiency score, for those who don't know, is the number of hours that you are asleep divided by the number of hours that you are in bed. So if you sleep for 6 hours but are in bed 8 hours, that is a 75% score. And that is not passing here. They wanted 90%. So what they wanted me to do, this is funny. I couldn't look at any, and I know that you're very anti-clock and anti-watch, and I understand why, but I wasn't allowed to look at anything. Don't look at your phone if you get up. Don't look at your tablet. And if you're in bed more than 15 minutes and you can't fall asleep, get out of bed. And I wanted to say, okay, how am I supposed to know how long I'm in bed if I'm not supposed to look up the clock? I was getting kind of fed up, and I know this is the CBT-I crowd. So I remember one night just guesstimating how long I was asleep. I hop out of bed. I'm like, well, I'm not allowed to watch TV. Can't look at my phone. Can't go on my iPad. So I was sitting in the middle of my floor, petting my cat Dora. And my wife gets up to go to the bathroom, comes out. She goes, what are you doing in the middle of the floor? I felt like I was on a Netflix episode called Why Mike Can't Sleep. I was like episode 2. That's where I was at the 6 episodes of my CBT-I. I appreciate anyone who gives me information on how to improve my life. I mean, I look at that, but
for sure.
This was not the solution. I think I heard the word rumination once and hyperarousal once. Your entire platform, Beth, is based on, insomnia is a misperception, but that why we're awake is hyperarousal. I don't think I ever learned that this is why I was awake. And in all of those Facebook groups, I mentioned your group to them once, and I think a couple of people had mentioned it. And I mentioned hyperarousal. No one was really focusing on that's what it is. And it's a really, I think we talked about this, Beth, in your program, which by the way, I found on Instagram. I know you're on other platforms, but I found you on Instagram, and I really liked your stories, the other podcasts, and the fact that you went through this was great. I mean, in full disclosure here, I've been sober for 13 years. When I first stopped drinking, I was like, you mean to tell me that people that messed up their own lives even worse than I did are going to tell me how to stop drinking? Well, yes, actually, those are the only ones that can do it and do it.
Yeah.
And so when I started realizing, I'm like, I'm talking to people that don't know anything about insomnia, about living with it. They're talking about how to fix it. Like it's a mathematical equation. No, it's not. My life is not a mathematical equation. So I realized when you talk to people who've lived through it, like yourself, much worse than I did, then I started saying there's opportunity here. So I did your free course. I listened to the podcast. One of your videos on Instagram, it really was a sentinel moment for me. And I showed it to the doctor. I'll get to that. So your video says suffering is not required to recover from insomnia.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And there's someone out there who can help me. So I really started to pay attention to what you were saying. And I think everyone who joins your program, and hopefully the others that will continue to join, will say that you're very empathetic to what they've gone through. Yeah, that is for sure. You understand that. And I never had that from anyone before. That summer, I did sleep a little bit better. I think it was partly because there was less pressure for the kids in school and all of that getting up. I did because I didn't want to take anything addictive like Ambien, lorazepam, Ativan. I did get a prescription for what's called trazodone. We had talked about this. Trazodone is non-habit forming. And I still have it, and I still do take it intermittently. That did cause the same effect like that Benadryl did. It causes a lot of dry mouth. So ironically, I woke up one night with a really dry mouth and drank all this water. And then I had to wake up again because, you got to pee. So when you're in your 50s, this was what happens. So I said, this is a nice stopgap measure, but I really don't want to be hooked up with this trazodone stuff. I really don't want to have to do anything that my body is capable of. And I think what your program has showed me, you've given me the tools to recover from insomnia, but moreover, you've illustrated that I don't need that much.
Yeah,
to recover from insomnia. So my youngest daughter started middle school in September, and the bus gets her at like 7:30. So we had to get up at 6:30, just like anyone other family does, no different than anyone else. That just sort of exponentially exacerbated the insomnia to the point where I started having like this overnight brain fog again. And I said, I'm done. So that's when I started, about when I signed up for your program, I something around that time. And it was great. The different videos that you have on embracing wakefulness. And I'm thinking, why would I want to celebrate the fact that I'm awake? And
it's a process.
Yes, it's a process, and you never say this is an overnight solution.
No,
and your videos I have for life, and I still go onto the Slack group. You have the Zoom meetings with the people in the program, and I think it's very important for me to to keep up with that because I found that there's tremendous power in letting go.
Yes,
and that I let go of my need to control and measure my sleep. I am slowly getting off of, I have a sleep tracker that I use when I wake up. It's free, but I'm thinking, why don't I just look at how I feel? Look at my quality of sleep, not my, so I know that you and Dr. Richard, your compatriot with the program, talk about this, and I'm really understanding it. I remember last night, for example, I'm really, really busy with my job right now, and I just wore my sleep mask. I'm not looking at any devices. I'm not measuring or doing anything because I just need to know how I feel. And part of me is tired now because of work, but not because I'm, ruminating
Yeah.
about this insomnia. I never knew how effective it would be. Just say, you know what? My brain knows what to do to sleep. And
Hmm.
meditations, I've done meditations. I tried counting backwards. I would start at 365 and I would count back by 7. So that's 358, then by 6, 352, 347, 343, 340, 338, 337. Hey, I just did all that. My mathematical skills went up exponentially as
Yeah.
my sleep anxiety also went up. I was trying in these things and I said, none
There's
of
got to
this.
be there's got to be a different way. And just going back to before you come into the program, and I'm so glad you saw that video on Instagram. And when you were describing the sleep getting up, and I was laughing with you because I went through that twice myself, and was sort of sitting in the dark, cold winter, wondering, is this really what it takes for me to get over this problem? And I'm glad you found me. You've come into the program and it's just been so wonderful working with you. And I know your recovery process. It was always so fun to talk to you because you would sort of drop these truth bombs in our appointments that were so succinct and just so spot on. And a lot of them were around this letting go. This letting go that you talked about a lot. So tell us a little bit more about you're in the program, you're learning a new way, you're understanding that really not that much is needed. You're seeing your own tracking and, even if you don't pull it away right away, it's okay. You're seeing it differently. But tell us a little bit more about this recovery process and this letting go.
I think you talked about Chronos and Kairos in one of your videos. Chronos is like the Greek word for measuring time. And then there's enjoying the time. Just focus on the time that you have, the quality of time. And the next thing was, even by measuring how long you're sleeping, you're still giving much undue, unnecessary, irrelevant attention to something, sleep, that can happen naturally on its own. And reminding myself when I do wake up, like I was sharing, I woke up last night, one of our cats was just being unruly because, it's a cat. And I just said, okay, well, I'm up. And then sometimes I'm a guy in his 50s. I got to go to the bathroom sometimes. I'm up and that's okay to be up. If I'm up for an hour, sometimes, oh, well, I'm up. I'll just lie here. I'm not really a big fan of the getting out of bed. There's a lot of people that talk about the getting out of bed. No, I just lie there. And one nice thing about your program, it says, look, if you need to go on your phone, you want to watch a video, you want to watch TV, you want to start doing work, that's fine. I do not hold any credence to what people would say, your bed is for sleeping and sex. If I had one more medical person had told me that, I was going to say, oh, shut up. That is just so... And I was just like, all of these people with all these advanced degrees telling me things that really are just that clearly showed that none of them had had insomnia. Maybe some of the doctors when they were in their residency did. But your embracing wakefulness was another thing. So what am I doing here? I'm using a mindfulness approach, mind you, that I'm up and that is okay. And there's no shame or guilt to be involved with that. I'm just up. Yes, I am a type A person. However, I could say, having been sober for 13 years, I've learned a lot about accepting things and people that I can't change. And also, one of the things that you learn is not having to respond. It's perfect for, not responding to an inflammatory email, or if a patient said something that's very biting and sarcastic. That's okay. They have the right to do that. I have the right not to respond. My body will sometimes wake up for no reason. My body has the tendency to do that. I can just acknowledge it. But it's such a paradox. And you've taught me this, and you teach everyone this, is when you start problem solving it, you're actually keeping yourself more awake, and your brain in the back of its mind is focusing on it again. So that's what I think it's what a lot of it is what I stopped doing. And by the letting go, I stopped trying to analyze why this ever happened. Yeah, I understand like the COVID, and then my wife had this, we were concerned about whatever she had in her brain or didn't have in her brain. But those are fleeting things. And I'm sure those kinds of things will happen again in my life. But having to just focus on not focusing on it. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
I know
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to explain. I know. And I remember a couple of things come to mind that you said during our calls. And one of them is when you surrender, the other side stops shooting. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, that's really powerful. And
It,
and also when you said the best way to control is not to control.
yeah.
And just realizing I remember saying several times, you need to accept that you're trying to control the uncontrollable and it's just not going to work.
And I will be frank, I shared, I'm active in recovery from drinking. I would share this insomnia things with people. No one really had gone through it. It was I was surprised. No one had any insight to it because I
Yeah.
thought that there's a lot of overlap. And this is why you go to someone who actually has lived through it. That was essential. I mean, I don't think anyone was really understanding the root cause of it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm going to still have trazodone on standby if I really need to sleep or I can't. But I remember, I think it was, so I started the program in the fall. It was sometime in the fall last year. It was the beginning of the program. I had a very bad night's sleep. It was a Saturday. I woke up on a Saturday. I had to see about 5 different clients. I was not in the mood. I was grouchy. The weather was crummy. I remember getting through my last patient and I said, oh my God, I felt awful today. And I was seamless with my work.
Mm-hmm.
That it is not, I don't need to catastrophize this. Like, oh, I just accept that it happens and move forward. For example, it's winter. It's going to be freezing cold. It's a good deal of the time. Okay. Well, then it's going to be nicer later.
Mm-hmm.
This will pass. A lot of simple things that, you can learn in other areas of life.
Yeah.
But I really needed to apply those because my quality of life, certainly in the spring last year and in September, it was poor because of how I was responding to this insomnia. And by the fact that I'm not responding to it as much that's the power of letting go. It's like letting go of this need to be in charge of it. No,
Yep.
I'm not in charge of my heart beating, my blood pumping, or
Yeah.
my breathing. Yeah, I can hold my breath, but that's not going to happen at night. My brain knows what to do.
Yep.
And
Yep. So well said.
and that's what it helps. And I'm going to continue staying in your program because I think it just reminds me of the things I need to do and the things I do not need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
To continue with this because I'm no different than most people. I have 2 kids, one's in college, and I like to exercise and run, and I've been able to do more running. I really stopped running for a while. Part of it is I have to spend more time, I'm older, to stretch and treat my body better. But I was getting to the point where I was giving up things. I wasn't going out. I wasn't going to concerts. I blew off. I felt badly. I blew off one of my friends. I said, I can't go to the game tonight. I'm really busy. I think I didn't want to go to it was a college basketball game. I didn't want to go to the game because I was afraid that I would end up screwing up my sleep again. And you mentioned this in one of your videos about when friends invite you to an early breakfast. And
Yeah.
I even snapped at my wife for getting up at 5:30. Well, she's going to work. Why am I snapping? No, she's not choosing to get up at 5:30 to annoy me. And that was what was happening where I was just losing by trying to be in control. I certainly was not in any control.
Yeah. And I think when you've gone through something like this with insomnia, there's a tendency to really want to protect your sleep, and really want to protect. That's just kind of the mode we get in versus just it being not something you think about much at all. So that's really understandable. How did you know that you were getting better? Because I remember talking to you once and you said you had some sleep disruption, but you forgot to worry about it. And I thought, and I'm like, that's okay. Then I know you really are getting better when you forget to worry about it.
Well, I think you had insomnia for over 3 decades.
4, yeah.
4. And your colleague is a physician who works with you, has had it as long.
Yep.
And both of you, I think, by following the path that you have laid out in the program, I found, so there 4 or 5, 6 weeks of, maybe those 8 weeks of different videos.
Yeah.
By the third one, 3 weeks into the program, which is so cost effective, this program, I was able to realize, oh, this is actually working. And it gave me the self-confidence, the inner peace. That's what I really wanted, was the inner peace. I wanted sleep, but I wanted not to feel so agitated. And by not focusing on it and taking my my sleep trackers off my wrist, my watch or whatever. That was huge because I'm like, well, I need to see how it's doing, not just guess. No, I can like I know how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And by not focusing on it, and yes, I do have tools. I do have trazodone. There's something at night called yoga nidra that I play, that it's basically some lady's soothing voice, and it's like a mindful
Yeah.
exercise. I have done that, but that is okay. But I don't think I need to rely on external
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
for the part of my brain, whatever part of the brain it is,
Yeah.
to do it. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
a
if
tool versus it's a tool versus a weapon. It's a tool, but the underlying intention is knowing that it's always your body doing the sleeping. And if these things help, then that's great. I had this woman, this this hypnotist, her name was Grace Smith, and for those first 6 months, maybe 12 months, I would listen to her, and I just loved her voice, and it was a great help to me. But I think it really goes down to the intention that shifts, from before you come into the program to during and after. You view these things differently, right?
yes, I don't view it with the same irritation
Yeah.
and agitation. I still had times where I'm up at 4 and whatnot, but what I do not have, thank God, is I don't have the falling asleep and waking up in an hour. And
Hmm.
that was actually, I'll give the CBT-I guy credit. He said you were between sleep stages when that happened.
Hmm.
I don't think he explained the hyperarousal was what it was,
Yeah.
but he was like 50% right. And, brilliant guy, but none of these people, including my wonderful primary care doctor, they were just, I don't know. I think people are missing the boat here. And I truly, truly feel that a lot more people have trouble sleeping, don't want to admit it, afraid to admit it, want to rely on pharmaceuticals to manage it.
Yeah.
And your option, I think, is a healthier, happier one. I think one of the tools is I can put the tools away, the
Mhm.
tools of my treating it like a mathematical equation,
Yeah.
having to graph it like it's my blood pressure or something. So that was a huge part of what you did.
Yeah.
And I'm very appreciative of it. I really am.
I know. I'm so glad that you were able to shift gears a bit and see the potential in this approach. And I think sometimes, and this was certainly true for me, you almost have to exhaust all those other options. I don't know if I had understood it the way I do now. I'm not sure at what point it would have grabbed. I know this wasn't explained to me either. And sometimes I feel a little grief about that. If I had understood better what was happening, how could it have been different? But I don't spend a lot of time there. But yeah, I think some people have to, we're sort of bombarded with the sleep hygiene. I mean, you just see it everywhere. It's just like almost like a brainwashing mantra. So, a lot of people just have to go down those other external fixes before they'll kind of go within, and it is within. And that's a great thing.
I was going to say, I'm well aware, and I have a 12-year-old, and the pediatricians, they're hammering every parent when they come in there. You take the phone out of your kid's room.
Yeah.
I like to think we're really good parents. We just haven't ventured down that, but there's a lot of talk about the phones. I think the phones is because people are looking at it rather than trying to go to sleep. I'm not an ophthalmologist. I understand you're exposing yourself to light, but it was more than that. And your program, it sees a bigger,
Yeah.
healthier, holistic, I think it says holistic in your mind, body, sleep approach that does not require suffering, that actually gives you the peace. It restores the peace and harmony in your life that you had with this thing we call sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That is it. You just nailed it. It's not a learning program as much as it is a remembering program, right? It's a remembrance. It's just remembering that it's been there all along. And you just said that beautifully. Last question, Mike. Any silver linings that have come with this experience for you?
So yes, I would say for people who are in the grips of insomnia, some people who are listening now, it's never as bad as you think it will be. And I just verified that when I had the 5 patients on a Saturday and I was very crabby, very cranky, and very sleep deprived. I got through it. I
Yeah.
was okay. And no, we're not all going to get early onset brain disease because we have insomnia.
Yeah.
Yes, sleep it helps with stress, it helps with quality of life. But I would say that was the silver lining with, yeah, I learned to recover from the insomnia, still have it, but I don't catastrophize it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's based on, I mean, the people that your experiences, the people that I've heard on your other podcasts. So that was definitely a silver lining that I was glad to hear, because there was, I don't know, when I was doing CBT-I, I felt like I was, getting my cholesterol levels checked and getting MRIs of my sleep something. It was a lot of gloom and doom, and the Facebook groups gloom and doom. That might make people feel better in an instant. It's really a shot of adrenaline. What I found was I can, even when I don't sleep, I can manage it, and that was the big silver lining.
Yeah. Great. I love that. I love that. And you are well on your way to peace of mind with sleep, Mike. And thank you so much for being here, for sharing the hope, for being a part of my world, for being you, all the things. It has been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Beth. I'm glad we had this talk today. It was very beneficial.
It sure was. And I shall see you in the group.
Yes. Thanks, okay. Beth.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Beth Kendall. This is the Mind, Body, Sleep podcast. Be well. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind, Body, Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.